Boston today after 8 seasons with the Charlotte Hornets. He replaces Kyrie Irving, who is now in Brooklyn, of course, after 2 drama-filled seasons with the Celtics. So Kemba, alongside Enes Kanter, more on him in a second. He signed today, too. But Kemba signed a 4-year, $141 million deal, and he said today he's ready.
It's a winning organization, and I want to win. That's what I'm about. Throughout my basketball career and as a pro, I haven't won consistently, and I just want to get a taste of that. And, I thought this was the best place for me to do that. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life. Charlotte's all I know. I've been there for 8 years. But like I said, it really came down to my happiness and, how I want to compete night in, night out. And like I said in the past, I've gave that organization everything I've had, every single night. My time was up there. I'm ready to start a new chapter.
And Jackie McMullen joins us now from Boston. Jackie, Kemba, 3-time All-Star in Charlotte. I mean, he'd always been committed to making it work there. What happened? How did he end up leaving for Boston?
Well, the truth of the matter is, Sage, Charlotte just didn't come up with the money. And Kemba told me today, just a few hours ago, he's kind of heartbroken that it didn't work out there. Remember, he wears Jordan brand. Michael Jordan was not only his hero, he was his employer and the person that drafted him. I think all things being equal, Kemba Walker thought he was going to be in Charlotte, but he's ready to do a new start here in Boston for sure.
And he replaces, of course, Kyrie Irving, who never seemed happy in his 2 seasons in Boston. That's putting it mildly. So how much, Jackie, if at all, did Kemba consult with Kyrie before making his decision to come to Boston?
It's interesting, Sage. I asked him that very question, and of course he knows Kyrie. All these players know each other, and he said, I just decided this is something I need to do on my own. This is a decision I want to make on my own. And he's very strong about the idea of making his own mark here. So he just didn't talk to Kyrie at all about this. He just went ahead and made this decision without that.
All right, Kemba Walker will wear number 8. And by the way, Enes Kanter also signed today. He'll wear number 11, Kyrie's old number. Fun season ahead in Boston with Enes and company. Jackie McMullen from Boston. Thank you. And remember last fall when Kyrie said he wanted to stay in Boston? And then he said in a Nike commercial that he, quote, wants to be the reason why no one else will ever wear number 11 again. Well, listen to what Enes Kanter said about that today.
Well, it was my old jersey number, by the way, number 11. And I want to be the reason that no one else will. I had to say it.
Enes Kanter.
He has fun.
He does have fun. Always trolling, and didn't take long for him to get a shot in on Kyrie there. I mean, hey.
The fan base would
get
like
it.
that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So despite losing Kyrie and Al Horford, that's a big loss. Boston did replenish its roster with Kanter and Kemba. The C's have the 3rd best odds to win the East next season at 7-1. Only the Sixers and Bucks have shorter odds to reach the finals. That's according to Caesars Sportsbook.
Sage, we're a day away from the final major of the season. Tiger Woods getting ready for trust me. One of the top linebackers in football was just rewarded a new contract. Details ahead as the NFL's opening training camps today. But first,
we begin with the association. You know how there's been a ton of talk of the Thunder and their attempts to trade All-Star guard Chris Paul. Not so fast. It's a developing story here on SportsCenter. Our Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that the Thunder's attempts to trade CP3 are, quote, parked. This news comes 6 days after the Rockets traded Paul to Oklahoma City in exchange for All-Star Russell Westbrook. And Woj joins us now live. Woj, it seemed like a foregone conclusion that Chris Paul would not be in OKC for long. Why have these trade talks stalled?
Well, part of it is the timing of the trade. Salary cap space is full around the league. Teams have finished their team building, and Chris Paul's contract, 3 years, $124 million at 34 years old, is a factor. And right now there's an expectation with the Thunder, with Chris Paul and his representatives that he will likely start training camp with Oklahoma City. And the conversation about revisiting a trade maybe around December 15th when free agents who signed this summer are eligible to be moved, that expands a trade market. Or very well next year when there are 2 years left on his deal. But the Thunder welcome Chris Paul in. They have a team that will be competitive, not a contender in the West. And Chris Paul's been at Oklahoma City before. He played a season there with New Orleans. And given the alternatives right now, he's comfortable with starting up with them and maybe even playing the whole year if there's just not a trade to be done.
Wow. So that's shocking considering what the talk has been since the move was made. Woj, how does Chris feel about all of this?
Well, listen, I think at 34 years old, of course, Chris Paul wants to be playing for a team that's competing for a championship. That's not the Thunder this year, but he can make the best of the situation there. Steven Adams, Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who the Thunder would love for Chris Paul to mentor. This is a competitive team, and it's an organization he's comfortable with. Billy Donovan as coach, Sam Presti as GM. And just given the lateness in the marketplace and what the opportunity that just isn't out there for a salary this big to try to fit in, jam in somewhere around the league, he's going to have to be patient and wait, and he's fine with that, I'm told.
Okay, Adrian Wojnarowski with the very latest on the future of 9-time All-Star Chris Paul, who is still awaiting his first appearance in an NBA Finals as he enters his 15th season. Here's a look at his new teammates. Woj just mentioned a couple of them. Of course, now in the trade, which happened 6 days ago, Steven Adams, Dennis Schroeder do return from last year's team. But we shall see if CP3 actually ends up staying in Oklahoma City the entire season.
Player commitments to teams to be a fluid, tenuous proposition. Can you really in this league count on anybody's commitment to a franchise? Paul George demands a trade 1 year into a 4-year deal. Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, guys moving with 2 years left on their deal. Are you really going to tell yourself, no. He always wanted to be a Laker. It's going to be okay. And number 3, the prospect of playing with LeBron James can be very attractive to some guys and not so attractive to others. So, LeBron James, welcome to your college recruiting experience. But this time, you're not being recruited. You are the recruiter. You have a 1-year window to recruit Anthony Davis. And acknowledging those 3 risks, you recognize that you had to make the deal for AD. I'm a firm believer in this. Just because you had to make a deal doesn't keep you, shouldn't keep you, and it would be bad business if you kept yourself from taking account of the risks. You have to if you want to succeed. But on the other side of the equation, what kind of risks did the Nets take on? I mean, you say, Will, come on, man. They did this with cap space. Free agents, they didn't trade anything. They didn't give up Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and multiple first-round picks as far as you can see into the future. They signed them with cap space, so what risks are there? Well, I want you to read between the lines. I want you to listen to some stuff, and I want you to think about the risks that the Nets took on for a moment. I played you this sound from Sean Marks, Nets GM, yesterday about how he learned that Kevin Durant was signing with the Nets.
The Instagram post that he put out, we were all sitting in the office and we all got that in real time with you guys. And we weren't even sure if we were getting a meeting that night or it was going to be a telephone conversation with him.
2 astounding things there. You found out when we did? You found out on Instagram? I mean, look, the one thing we learned from this is players run the league. If there's any question about who's in charge anymore, we know it's the players. If you're learning out, you signed a player that a player is saying to you, I will work for you, not can I work for you. There's no questions about who runs the league. The other point you should take from that audio is, what is Sean Marks' accent? What is that? Is that Australian? What is that? Can I play it for you one more time? Listen to the word all and telephone, and you tell me where this comes from.
The Instagram post that he put out, we were all sitting in the office and we all got that in real time with you guys. And we weren't even sure if we were getting a meeting that night or it was going to be a telephone conversation with him.
Oh, telephone night. Sean Marks from Down Under. But I digress. There's an article up on ESPN.com that goes into some more stuff that Sean Marks had to say. And I think that you see the risks that the Nets are going to be encountering. First of all, I want you to reconcile these 2 sentences. First, he says, regarding their coach, Kenny Atkinson, I can assure you Kenny is not going to be anything different than who Kenny is. Okay? And then there's this. I think everything has to change slightly. We haven't had that type of talent. Things are going to change. Things are going to adapt. They have to. They have to start driving the culture. We have to learn from them. These guys are elite level players. We have to see what we can learn from them. Talking about KD and Kyrie. But Kenny Atkinson's not going to change? Just doesn't quite add up. All right, so maybe Sean Marks is talking and he's not really thinking about how that doesn't add up, but we should. We should acknowledge those risks. You had a successful team, young team that was scrappy and overperforming in the playoffs, and you added Kyrie Irving. Where have I heard that before? And just like the Lakers proposition, I'm not telling you this is something that the Nets shouldn't have done. Of course you do this. Of course you take on the risk, but you also acknowledge the risk.